Hello people, what is going on? We are back again with another video. To my right is Jay, you know who he is, and we're here to talk about West Ham, Palace defeat, Matt Hummels and Nicholas Füllkrug has signed. You know what I mean? Jay, how you doing?
I'm good, man. We got our wish from last week that we'd sign some players. So yeah. I'm good, mate. How you feeling?
I'm all right, mate. All right. I've been a bit dicky, but, you know, I'm back to reality now and back on the West Ham train. Right, let's start off with the signing, Nicholas Füllkrug. What do you make of him?
I mean, I said last week that it makes a lot of sense, and I am happy we've got it over the line, to be honest. To kind of reiterate a couple of things that I said last week, when you get the opportunity to sign a player of that quality and potentially solve one of the many problem positions that we've got, I think it's a good signing, and I think it's good business. I still think that the Duran thing, I confess, I thought it was a smokescreen when we sat here last week and thought we were going to push hard for Duran. But if Villa didn't want to play ball and they want to have an unhappy player on their hands, we get a top quality striker who I think's got a good chance of being a success at West Ham, despite his age. We can talk about that in a moment, I'm sure. And we can always go back for Duran next season. I don't think anyone else is coming in for him. And it will fit in terms of a concept I talked about last week, whereby if you're going to have this kind of transition we're going to have, it's a 2-year project. So in the sort of short term, Füllkrug could come in and make a big impact. And Duran can be the player that we go to next season to get that sort of younger blood through the door and have 2 strikers that hopefully will be able to rotate and both be able to score goals for West Ham. So, but yeah, I don't know what you think about the age thing and how it sits now, because I know last week you were a little bit skeptical.
I think what it is with me is now we're starting to see Somerville coming in. Obviously, Rodriguez. Füllkrug, to me, the age thing does bother me a little bit, and the fee that he's gone for, I think it's like something like 27.5 million or something like that. Yeah, which is quite a lot of dough for a 31-year-old. But I suppose if you're looking at it short term, Lopetegui's here 2 years, he needs to get into Europe. So if you're going to go and buy someone, you're going to buy someone like him who can score your goals. Well, the only issue I've got is, can he adapt to the Prem? Yeah, if he can, then we've got a really good player on our hands. If he don't, then Lopetegui and especially Steiden will be looked at and said, well, hold on a minute, this one's a bad move, what you've done here. But I think for what he brings and the hold-up play and everything else, and having Somerville, Kudus and Bowen behind him, I think it's a good signing, really. Like it could work wonders for us, like short term, but long term, definitely not, mate. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And if we talk about short term to start with, I'm sure you've seen this clip going around of the goal that he scored against PSG in the Champions League semi-final. The movement and the finish is absolutely outrageous. It's the kind of movement that we would have expected from Mikel Antonio, but on his left peg, he pumps that into Rose Ed, mate. Like there's no two ways about it. No disrespect to Mick. I'm a huge Mikel Antonio fan. But I still think that we have to look at this budget that we've got, the amount of players that we need to sign. Obviously, we've signed 3. I know Füllkrug was just announced, and the talk is that Rodriguez has just put pen to paper on the contract as well. So you look at the amount of players we still need to sign, and I'm sure we'll talk in a bit about centre-back and Zouma, Hummels, that kind of situation at the moment. When you look at the business this is now potentially enabled us to do, in that you can get Füllkrug, he's proven on the sort of European stage. Then we've gone and secured the deal for Somerville as well, who I'm a huge fan as well. I think he's going to do really, really well for West Ham. To have a proper left winger who hopefully will do all the things that we thought Ben Rama was going to do when he signed from the Championship. If he comes in and does really well on that left-hand side, we've suddenly got tons of options going forward. And now that we've got those options going forward, we can really focus on defensive reinforcements, which are sorely, sorely needed. I'm
going to be honest, defensive reinforcements is definitely 100% needed. Let's talk about Palace at the weekend. Obviously, I've done a video late on Saturday or Sunday morning, in fact, and I was fuming. I wasn't happy because I thought, listen, I know it's a friendly, I'll get that, but you do look at player performances, and all of our defenders wasn't good. What did you make of Palace in Tampa?
Same as you, mate. I try not to draw too much on the actual results of a friendly, but the individual performances just aren't good enough. The same kind of issues that we've seen time and time again from last season of silly mistakes defensively, the same kind of issues that we saw against Wolves out there as well. So the overarching concern that I've got from pre-season is probably the same concern that everyone else has got, and the same concern that it seems Lopetegui's got as well, which is just we can't defend. Like we just don't have enough quality at the back, and we don't have any leaders at the back. That's what strikes me a lot. The likes of and that's a really good point from Stuart there. In the lacking Alvarez in centre midfield and playing the likes of Souček, the youngsters they're youngsters. You can't dig out the youngsters for playing in pre-season. Like, that's absolutely fine. But it really, really concerns me that we don't have a really strong spine to our team, and we keep conceding goals. So defensive reinforcements are an absolute must for us now.
What did you think of certain individuals at the weekend? Let me reel off a few names. Start off with Soufal first.
There's something with Soufal, right, in that he's been a great servant for the club, but he does look prone defensively. Like, one-on-one defending, he's been all of last season. He looked suspect one-on-one, and I'm convinced that we now need to push really hard for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and we need to get that deal over the line as quickly as possible. He's like, you can say whatever you want about Wan-Bissaka, right? But when you concede about 70 goals in one Premier League season, you need players who, when they're squared up one-on-one, are going to deliver for you. And Soufal's not that bloke. He looks like he's short on pace. I know that he come back late because he was in the Euros, but at the same time, you can't have someone who gets caught out positionally as much as he does. And for me, the next position we have to sign is Wan-Bissaka. Like, we really, really need to replace Soufal. And I like him as a player, and I like what he's done for the club. There's a lot of players in that squad who I'm very fond of and who have done brilliant things in the previous sort of regime at West Ham. But we're not under that regime now, and there's no place for anyone to hide, as it seems from what the head coach has taken from pre-season, is that there are positions that we're suspect, and all of our back four looked really, really suspect against Palace. And that's the reason we ended up shipping 3 goals. Yeah,
I agree, mate. I thought Mavropanos, which we'll get onto now, is... I think he's a bit of a walking disaster at the minute. Everyone raves about him, but I don't see it. I don't see the sort of hype. I don't know about you, but at the weekend, there were so many mistakes from him. So many.
I've never seen it, mate. I don't think he's a bad player, but I think he was the best of a bad bunch of centre backs that we had last season. And when you look at what was around him, Aged just hasn't got going at West Ham. Zouma is done, as I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. Zuma's done at West Ham, and Ogbono's obviously no longer there, and he was at the end of his career at West Ham anyway. So Mavropanos was the shining light out of what was a really poor batch of centre-backs last season, and he's going to get found out, unfortunately. I think he played a few good long balls, but that's about it, and that's not good enough for a Premier League centre-back. So for me, I think what's going to happen moving forward is, out of those centre-backs at the club at the moment, next season, the only one who's there is Max Kilman. That's the only player out of those centre-backs who will be there next season. So, I'm with you, mate. Like, I don't think Mavropanos is the answer to all of our questions. As like a 4th choice centre-back, I'd be happy with him as like an emergency backup, but that's it.
I think for a 3rd choice, if you're playing a back 4 and you've got 2 centre-halves and he's the 3rd one in line, I think he's a good centre-half to have. I think he can come in and do a job on an odd occasion, but not in a 30-plus game a season man from the start. I think he played a pass against Palace the other day, which drove me mental. Literally passed it out straight to their player. They can't attack us, and then we're all over the place. And what done me on the weekend was the lack of leadership. Is the word I'm looking for. Like, there was no leaders on there. There was no one taking control of the situation, especially with the first goal. And even with the 3rd goal, Kilman gets absolutely roasted, completely destroyed. And my £40 million defender shouldn't be getting destroyed like that, especially against Edouard of Palace. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Let's talk about Zouma. Obviously, he's been told he can go. How do we get rid of him in regards? Because obviously, who's going to really want him? Do we loan him, or do we just terminate his contract?
That's the magic question, isn't it? So here's the way I look at this, right? When you look at we talked about the vision, and there's a lot of question about the vision and the scattergun policy of transfers and stuff like that. Now we've got players coming through the door that have a real smattering of kind of experience or up and coming young players. I think the vision is kind of taking shape. We need a combination of players who are going to A, have an impact this coming season, and B, grow alongside experienced players and have an impact in the following season and the season after that and the season after that, right? So for Zouma, I think if you can get Mats Hummels, I'm all for having Mats Hummels in and Zouma out, personally. And the reason I say that is exactly the thing that you just said. We are completely devoid of leadership in that back four. And who could you ask? Like, what better could you ask for than a player who has tons of Champions League experience, has been a born natural leader, and has been world-class throughout his career? I mean, he played in pretty much every game in Dortmund's run to the final in the Champions League last season, and he got man of the match in a few of them. So if you need someone to come in and lead and have an impact for 2 seasons, I say if you can get Hummels, terminate Zouma's contract for me. Because like you said last week, I don't see any suitors for him. I don't see anybody coming in for him. And there's no way you can encourage that unless a Saudi team comes in and has just got more money than sense. That's the only thing we're hoping for, in my opinion, mate.
I agree to a point, yeah. The only issue is that 35, he's a free transfer. One of the lads who was on here about a month ago mentioned Hummels, Mitchell, and he turned around and said that it wouldn't be a bad signing for someone who's a free agent. Do you know what I'm saying? Coming in, he can sort of marshal the defence. The issue I've got is that it just seems like we haven't got many leaders in the whole squad. Like it's not just like in the 11; it's in the whole squad. I will get to that shortly. Hold on. We really are trying for Matt O'Reilly. Well, we're linked with him apparently, so let's hope we can get him. I think he's a very good player, but we will talk about that in a minute. But to round it up with Hummels, I think it'd be a good deal for a year or two. I think like a season or like a year with an option maybe, just to get us out of this sort of slump at the minute, because I was so embarrassed at the weekend watching them players trying to defend. It was just like Benny Hill. They was all running around and no one knew how to defend. Now, the Lopetegui system obviously expresses itself with the wing backs flying on and all that. But if you've got players who can't defend, and especially with no sort of strength and solidness in the middle of the park, then we're just going to get cut through, mate. We're just going to get cut through. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think to that chap's, I can't remember his name, sorry, but that chap's comment about centre midfield. And the only thing I'm kind of taking solace in here is look at the players that are still due to come back and haven't featured in pre-season yet. You've got Areola, Bowen, Paqueta, Alvarez, Rodriguez, Somerville, and Fulcrum, all as new signings, potentially Aaron Wan-Bissaka. That's pretty much an entire side there. So that's not me making excuses or saying that anything about the Palace performance is excusable, because I don't think it is. But it's kind of to the point that you had made last time we were on, and what we'd been discussing is that this is going to take a bit of time. And I think after that first international break is when this group of players that are still yet to feature are going to start looking sharp, and when we're going to start to look like the kind of team that we can probably expect for the rest of the season. So the only thing I'm kind of taking solace in at the moment is once you get that midfield 3 of perhaps Alvarez, Paqueta, Kudus, perhaps Alvarez, Rodriguez, Paqueta, like whatever 3 decides to go for, that is like miles better than what we're currently putting in centre midfield at the moment. Playing like Souček and Freddie Potts, poor old Freddie Potts, like he's looked really good most of pre-season, but you chuck him in against Premier League opposition without an experienced like number 6 next to him, and he looked like a fish out of water, and we will get cut through because he's not used to that. So hopefully he's taken a lot of learnings from this, and I still hope that the likes of him and Lewis Orford do get their chance at some point this season. But the thing I'm taking solace in is we've got a lot of players to come back. We've still got more signings to make. But for that reason, the question I ask is, who would you rather go into the season with? To anybody who's doubting Mats Hummels, I look at this as do you want Zouma or do you want Hummels? And for me, I take Hummels over Zouma like all day. And that's my opinion on that. And that's why I say Mats Hummels, bring him in.
I think it all depends on the finances and all, doesn't it? Because if West Ham can go out and get a proper centre half, young up and coming centre half, then I'll be all for it. Zouma is done, but then so is Aguerd. Aguerd's no different. I watched him at the weekend, and I try my hardest to give this geezer the benefit of the doubt. I try my hardest to go, you know what, he's going to change. He's going to get better. But even at the weekend, he was all over the place. Like the second goal, he ducks under the ball when the ball's coming in. Right, it's a cross comes in. It's a decent-ish cross, and then he just ducks under it. Yeah. So I agree with what you're saying about Hummels. I think Hummels he's good for a season, and then what you do is you pinpoint next season like a centre half and other positions which might need filling, like a covering left back might be needed next season. A centre half if you're going to be covered next season. Probably even a right-sided player might be covered next season if Kudus goes, or if another player decides to leave, like Paqueta or something. You mean you've got to pinpoint that long term. So I'm with you on that. It's just it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work West Ham are doing. I am shocked that West Ham have gone bang 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 with the transfers, i.e. Rodriguez and Fulkrug at Somerville. And I'll be honest, I think Somerville's going to be a gem, like a real class player.
Agreed.
Let's get your thoughts on all three of them now, because obviously you mentioned Fulkrug, but Rodriguez we don't really know about.
Yeah. Come out of nowhere, that didn't it? How did that happen? Like this lad that none of us really were aware of. It seems that the whole of Europe was sleeping on this bloke. From anyone who knows about this guy as a player, said, and I've seen, as I'm sure you have as well, I've seen that picture of him when he played with Alvarez at Las Americas or Club them Las Americas, something, whatever their name is. And they seem to strike up a really good partnership there. So it makes a lot of sense in a side that you're going to need A, leadership, as we've already said, and B, players who can play the Lopetegui kind of style. From what I read, he's very similar to Alvarez, but has better passing range and is better on the ball, which is music to my ears, to be honest. That sounds like a really good bit of business. And if he was good enough for Barcelona, considering he was on the verge of moving to Barcelona, and then that falls through, then to go in and get him on a free and again address what is probably a problem position for a Lopetegui style team is really, really shrewd business and really, really well done. Again, the jury is still out for a lot of people on Tim Steidten, but that is opportunism at its best. To go in and see Lopetegui has clearly identified that defensively and transitionally moving the ball forward through midfield has been our problem area in pre-season, to immediately work on the fly. And this goes back to that point of why was Tim Steidten in Florida. He's getting that feedback from the manager like that straight after games, and he's reacting and he's going, I can get you Guido Rodriguez. Here's the scouting report. Here's the data on him. Here's why I think he's a good player. And bam, it's done. Suddenly he's on a jet and he's signed for West Ham. And he's the ink's probably still wet on his contract. So I think that's a real shrewd bit of business personally. And like you say, that Somerville signing, the amount of goal involvements and Championship Player of the Season last year, history has shown when players come off the back of a season like that in the Championship, and I'm thinking of Bere Eze, players like that. I'm thinking Ivan Toney. I'm thinking James Maddison when he signed for Leicester. Those players came off the back of blistering seasons in the Championship and went and did brilliant things in the Premier League. So I think those two bits of business are brilliant bits of business. And this fee that's been reported and this supposed mystery exit clause, I think we've got a better deal than we probably have seen in the press out of that one. But again, that will come out in the accounts, as will the Fulkrug deal as well, which has been reported as really expensive, but apparently is a lot cheaper than has been reported too. So I think overall, as a trio of deals that happened in the space of 6 days, and we had that crazy Friday when it was probably the happiest West Ham Twitter has ever been since the founding of Twitter. It was just great, wasn't it, to see these deals just advancing, getting done, and the West Ham of old that sat and dithered had disappeared, and suddenly we're getting business done and we're getting players through the door, which is exactly what we needed. So kudos and credit where it's deserved to the recruitment team for reacting on the fly to what is a changing situation, which is Lopetegui learning about these players in this system, and 3 deals over the line. Couldn't be happier with them, to be honest.
I think Somerville, for me, is a star. I've seen him at Leeds for the last few years. I watched quite a lot of Leeds back end of last season. I think this kid has got the goods, and I think he's going to step up to the plate. And I think he could be like another Bowen regen, like someone who comes in, but he's going to be lead for on that left-hand side. Rodriguez is a hard one for me because I don't know nothing about him. But what I will say is picking up an Argentinian international World Cup winner, Copa America winner for a free transfer. That's very smooth from West Ham, like very smooth bit of business. One thing I will say, and someone just put it in my chat there, could Alvarez end up at centre back? Is that a possibility that Alvarez goes back to centre back where he plays for Mexico?
I like it, to be honest. I don't mind it at all. I think that's a really, really great option. Because you think about it this way as well, and I was having this debate with someone the other day. There's a lot of talk about where Paqueta plays in this side, and the amount of centre midfield options that we're getting now. When you think you've got Rodriguez, you've got Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, I actually think has still got a role in that squad as well. I don't think he should be starting, but I think he's got a role to play in that squad. Where do you put Paqueta? Because whoever you put out on the left ends up, out of Paqueta and Kudus, ends up suffering and ends up not playing to the full of their ability. And now you've got Somerville there. Somerville's not signed to come and sit on the bench and work his way into that team. He's signed because he's ready to make an impact in a top half Premier League side. So for me, you've got the opportunity to put Alvarez at centre-back if it works. Guido Rodriguez can come in and be, as the scouting report says, I've not watched him, but the scouting report says he's similar to Alvarez but can pass better. You can put Paqueta in the 8 next to him as a more deep line playmaker and then put Kudus in the 10. Now, that is a really contentious point for a lot of people. I don't know where you stand on this, James, right? But I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter recently of a lot of negativity towards the idea of playing a midfield 3 of defensive midfielder at the 6 and Paqueta and Kudus as your sort of 8 and 10. What do you think of that?
I don't trust us. It's not the players. It's us as a club. I don't trust us to do, because I think teams will suss us out. Do you know what I mean? Especially with Paqueta and Alvarez there. Do you know what I mean? I think Paqueta's more better further forward. I think you pick him up 25, 30 yards out from goal, and he can spray passes. He can make things happen. Paqueta. Yeah, he's not one to beat a man, so to speak. He's not one who's like dance through people, but he has got it in his arsenal to do that. Do you know what I'm saying? But for me, I'm not keen on it. I'd have to see it in action. If you're going to do that, and you do that in pre-season, or you do that next week, do you know what I mean? If you're going to come out next week against Celta Vigo, then you have to go out and pretty much pick a similar team that you're going to pick against Villa the following week. Do you know what I'm saying? The issue I've got with it is Paqueta loves a booking. Alvarez loves a booking. I think Alvarez at centre half doesn't get booked half as much, if I'm being honest. Because I think when Alvarez gets booked, it's always clumsy fouls and stupid things that he gets booked for. Do you know what I'm saying? And for me, I find it's too attacking. I think if you had 2 defensive midfielders there, and then you had someone like a Kudus or Paqueta, then I understand it. But then you've got to drop one of them. So you got a bit of a problem unless you're playing a 3-5-2.
Yeah, this is the thing. And the thing for me, and the reason I like the concept of it, and I briefly touched on this at the end of last week when we sort of got to this conversation right at the end. But the reason I like it is, you're right. If this was last season, it's way too attacking and it's way imbalanced. And that like Paqueta playing in a more deep role is not set up to play a low block. But the idea here being that if we're going to counter press when we lose the ball, and you need someone in an 8 who can lie deep, press well, and win a tackle, Paqueta's tackling stats are unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. So if you've got a disciplined 6 next to him, i.e. Rodriguez or Alvarez, however it ends up being, I'm not saying this is a one-size-fits-all kind of solution, and I'm not saying go and play this away to City, go play this away to Arsenal, Liverpool. In your games like that, you need a more sensible approach. But in your games against maybe your Southamptons and your Leicesters at home, for me, there's no reason why we shouldn't be trying to choke the opposition out of possession. And when they try and play through the lines, you've got a switched on player like Paqueta who can step forwards and win in the press and then recycle it and have the vision and the passing range to actually dictate play from a deeper position, which we haven't had in the last few years. For me, that's a concept that, similar to you, I want to see it in action, and I want to see us try it against Celta Vigo and just see what it does. And if it works, we should be trying it in a game in the Premier.
I get that argument. I do. I get that side of the coin, what you all just said there about if you're playing against lower end teams at home, you want to be showing your dominance, so to speak. Yeah. So I understand that, but it's just, as a free, I just don't see it. I think Kudus is better on the right. I think he can take people on. He can do more damage from the right. I think Alvarez as a 6, fair enough. I understand that. If it was me, I'd just play a 4-2-3-1. I'd just go 4-2-3-1, Alvarez and Rodriguez, if that's the case. Because I know you say about James Ward-Prowse, and we're going to mention it. But I think one of them's going, Ward-Prowse or Souček. I think one of them's out the door, right? Or even Andy Irving might be out the door and all. So I don't see where you get so many midfielders in. Obviously, Matt O'Reilly's been linked with West Ham. Now, for 25 million reported, and we're being linked with him, I'd love him at West Ham. I think he's a very, very good player. I think he can play in multiple positions. He can play on the left, right, all over the place, basically. How did West Ham solve the midfield situation then for you?
It's a great problem to have, isn't it? Like we're talking about who we're going to have in centre midfield, and then we're being linked with a player like Matt O'Reilly, who he had 31 goal involvements for Celtic last season. Like he was absolutely unbelievable. And you talked about Paqueta, and he's better in the sort of final third of the opposition. He pops up in his half spaces. Matt O'Reilly is very similar in that respect. He's really, really good at finding space, and his passing range and his vision. One-touch passing, the amount of assists he picks up from one-touch passes was unbelievable for Celtic last season. So he's got it all. He is, if not a player who's going to come in and have an impact this coming season, he's a player that when Paqueta eventually leaves, whether it's next season or if he gets banned or whatever, he's the kind of player that will be able to come in and play the same kind of role as what Paqueta does. So for me, I agree. Like he's an absolute no-brainer for 25 million. And the worst thing we could do is let him go to someone like Brighton. Brighton have been interested in him. Southampton have been interested in him. But going to someone like Brighton, I think he'd do brilliantly at Brighton if he goes into that side. And we can't allow that to happen. A team that's similar to us is going to be looking up the table and trying to get higher than they did last season. We can't allow him to go to a rival like that. So for me, he's top quality and we should be trying to sign him. But similar to you, I think we're setting up for a real flurry of outgoings. I think there's a lot of players that we could see either offered out or out the door at the end of the transfer window, probably not for a lot of money. And I, for me, think as harsh as it is, and as much as the bloke has been brilliant for West Ham, and I absolutely love him, I think Souček's probably the one for me that needs to move on, because I think he's an impact sub now. And if you look at, let's say we have a string of injuries, who would you rather have sitting in that centre midfield position under a Lopetegui system, James Ward-Prowse or Souček? I think I'd have Ward-Prowse 100%. And which is why I say I think Ward-Prowse has a role to play. I think Andy Irving, as much as I want him to be a success and I want him to be the next Craig Dawson, I don't think he's quite there. And I don't think he's got a future at West Ham personally. If you're going to be looking to bring in players of the quality of Matt O'Reilly, Irving's getting no minutes. Souček's going to really struggle for minutes. And James Ward-Prowse is probably the one that I'd say is your backup centre midfielder. So for me, I think Souček and Irving are probably on the way out.
See, if we weigh this up and you look at the midfield, you go Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, Souček, Irving. If you add Paqueta into that, and then you add Rodriguez into that, then you add the youth players into that, i.e. Freddie Potts, Orford, and Earthy, because Earthy's around that sort of midfield stroke winger type position. Yeah, we've got about 6-7 players there. Now, for me, I think Souček and Ward-Prowse are the money value. And what you said is right, is that we're going to sell a lot of players for cheap, but I don't think West Ham can afford to have so many midfielders without getting some money back. Yeah. For me, it'd be a shame if Souček goes, because he has been a good servant to West Ham. I'm not going to knock him. I think what he's done, he scored some key goals for us over the years. I think Ward-Prowse, he's been here a year. He's done okay. But if someone said to me right now, you got Matt O'Reilly or you got James Ward-Prowse, you go and sell Ward-Prowse for 25 million, to someone, and you get Matt O'Reilly in for 25. And it's like it's a no-brainer, isn't it? To a point.
Yeah. When you put it like that, that's literally shake hands on that deal right now if that was to happen. But I don't see anyone offering 25 million for James Ward-Prowse is the problem. And I could see, again, I don't know how much you'd get for Souček nowadays as well, but combined those two, you'd get probably more than you'd get for Matt O'Reilly.
What would you value Souček at? If you used to value him,
probably like 10 mil, 10 to 15, somewhere around that. Probably that.
I don't know, mate. I don't know, because when I look at him, he's a goal-scoring midfielder. He's box to box. He guarantees your goals from midfield, from a defensive midfield stance. So for £10 million, I don't see another player doing that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
you're right. But historically, we're just bad at selling players, aren't we? Like,
yeah.
When's the last time we got good money for a player? Like, or we turned a profit on a player? I think we did once or twice in the last transfer window. And other than that, we just struggle to sell players. And I think because we're going to be selling from a position where we're effectively distress selling, aren't we? Because we've got, as you mentioned, we are so deep in that position now. We're going to be looking at, and when we start offering players out, you're going to start getting offers from, I know there was a couple of Turkish clubs that were interested in. They're not flush with cash, but they'll take him, and they'll probably take him for a reasonable fee. And I'd say 10 to 15 is probably what we'd get offered. And it's whether we want to take that. Like you say, if we were negotiating from a position of strength where we didn't want to sell him and we could dictate terms, then the second a 10 million offer comes in, you laugh it out the door. But the fact that we got so many players there, and we could do with reusing his wages elsewhere as much as we could as much as we could do with using the transfer fee. I think if you look at an offer of 10 to 15, somewhere in there, you go, it's probably sensible business just to take the money, move him on, and improve in that position. Personally, anyway.
I can understand that. I can. But when I look at him, I think he's got more value than what our fans deem him as. Like, if that makes sense. When you look at him, and like someone just put it there, Souček had 7 goals and 3 assists last season.
Yeah.
Now, as a midfielder, what would you class him as? A defensive midfielder or a box-to-box midfielder?
Box-to-box more than that, isn't he?
Yeah, right. So he's good in both boxes. I think if you get 20 million for him, because if Flynn Downs is going for 20 million, right, or 18 million, then Souček's definitely got to be going for a bit more than that. Do you know what I mean? Because I think what Souček brings you, I know it's English tax and all that, but you got to look at what the player brings to a certain style of play. And I think Souček could go somewhere else where the style of play fits him, and he could be easy a 10 goal a season merchant for them over. And he don't get injured either. So
he comes off with a new scar in his head every game, doesn't he? He puts himself about. So you're absolutely right. And maybe when you step out of the West Ham echo chamber, there's clubs out there that will look at him and go, wow, he's perfect for us. So I hope I'm wrong. And I hope that if we do decide to sell him, which it looks like we will, I hope we get 20 mil for him. And I'd happily eat humble pie on that one and be wrong. But, you know, time will tell whether the offers start coming in. You look at the other players that we're going to have to move on, and you look at the Zouma thing, which we've already discussed. You look at, I think, the idea, and certainly the idea I would have here, I know we touched on Hummels versus Zouma. The Todibo thing is still rumbling on in the background. And I think we're still keeping offers for Aged on ice somewhere. We had some low ball offers, or probably some reasonable offers from France for a knife Aged. And I think if we manage to get Todibo over the line, we probably just pull the trigger on Aged straight away and we move him on. If you could move on Zouma and Aged and bring in Hummels and Todibo, that's incredible business. Absolutely unbelievable business. So there's some good trading that I think could be done there. And we were probably at the end of our patience this time last week, where we hadn't signed anyone in about 4 weeks, and we were talking about needing about 6 first teamers to come in. We've got 3 of them now, and now we need to be looking at sensible business. And I think, hence, I'm looking at, if you can get Souček out for reasonable money and get Matt O'Reilly in, great business. If you can get Aged and Zouma out and get Hummels and Todibo in, that's great business as well. And then you start looking at our squad and going, geez, that's actually really, really filled with good quality players. But at the moment, I still think that it's deep in centre midfield. There's players that need to go. It's not deep at centre back, and we really, really have to make some moves there.
Yeah, I agree. On the centre back front, I couldn't agree any more. I just feel the centre back, 70 goals we can see last year, and we've changed it with 1 defender.
Yeah.
So Kilman's good, but he's not a world-class centre-back. He's a good defender, very good defender, but, you know, we need a lot more than just good, especially at our club.
Yeah.
In regards of midfield, though, right, obviously, I know what you just said about Paqueta, Kudus, and Alvarez. Where do some of these players fit? Because obviously Rodriguez, right, he's coming into this side. I don't think he's coming in to be like a makeshift. I think he's coming in to start, like, if I'm being honest. Yeah. I would love to know your 11.
Mate, I've been sitting here thinking of this for a while now, especially with the new players that we're looking at come in. And it's really hard to pick, isn't it? And I similar to what I said earlier, I think I have 2 different 11s dependent on who we're playing. And I think the good thing about having a manager like Lopetegui is I don't think he'll be scared to rotate the team. He's got no favourites. He's got a style of play. He'll know that it's horses for courses. He'll know there'll be certain games where you look at the scouting report and perhaps the centre-backs are struggling for pace, but they're really strong. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes, right, let's chuck Bowen up top today and let's put Kudus out on the right. Let's put Paqueta in the 10 and let's try and beat them with pace. If you go Kudus, Bowen, Somerville as your front three against centre-backs who potentially struggle for pace, you invert Kudus and Somerville when needed and you have Bowen making the runs, suddenly you're going to look a completely different outfit to when we play perhaps Fulkrug at centre forward and then play maybe Paqueta dropping in off the 10 and Kudus on the left. And mate, there is so many options here. If I still played FIFA, I'd be like, geez, this is unbelievable. this is a team that I've just gone and bought on FIFA. Like,
I will say one thing. That's one thing with every West Ham fan that we are going to notice this year, that we are going to have options at last. Like how many over the last few years we've had 2-3 subs and that's it. We've had no one else. Now I can actually see Lopetegui using all 5 subs every game.
Yeah,
like I can see him rotating it. I don't know why. I have this feeling, with the Duran deal, that it ain't done yet.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I don't know about you. We're going to speak about the Duran deal in a minute. But for me, I look at our team and I think our team it's got pace on either flank now. Right. I just think that if we can just sort the defence out and do what you said, I'll make you 100% right. Tobido and Hummels in, Zouma and Aguerd out. I think you're looking at that as being a potential really good defenders. Hummels can come in and do a job. He's no mug. He's an experienced centre half. He's German. Them German players know how to defend. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, you know what I mean? Right. Let's talk about Duran before we come towards the end, mate. What are we saying on this? Are we saying that it's a dead deal? Is there still life in it, or is it going to be next season for you?
I think we'll have one more go. And I think we're going to play the waiting game here. I reckon we've obviously got the priority. For me, the priority is right back now. The priority is get Wan-Bissaka over the line. And we look desperately short at the back. I don't want to see us messing about with Duran yet. If Villa came back to us and went, do you know what? We will accept this deal now. And we had the budget and we knew we could still get our centre-backs and right-back in, then awesome. Go and bite their hand off for it and get him in. I don't think it's an urgent position now. And I think based on his situation at the club, where all the talk is he's burnt all the bridges that he possibly could trying to force this move to West Ham, and it's not happened. So he's got to go back there. He's probably going to be isolated. The manager's not going to be happy with him. The board ain't going to be happy with him. So he's going to be rotting at that club for a little while now. And I think his agents are going to be desperately trying to resurrect this deal on our behalf. So I think we can probably sit back on that and wait until the season started, wait till we've played them, and then revisit it towards the end of the season, or to the end of the transfer window, sorry. So I think there's life in it. I'm not fussed if we don't get him. I'd really like to get him over the line, but I still think we've got to get rid of Ings then. Because you can't go into the season with 4 centre forwards. Like we talk about our squad and how bloated it is in certain positions now. You've got to see some centre midfielders out the door, and you've got to see Danny Ings out the door as well. And it sounds kind of harsh on some of those players, but at the same time, we don't need a 4th centre forward, especially a John Duran who is still 20 years old, still not fully proven, and still going to take time to bed into the side, I think.
I don't know, Jay, but I'm going to be honest. I think something's happening with Mikel Antonio, mate. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know. For me, if West Ham are going after Duran, it means that Mickey will be up on offer then. Do you know what I mean? I think Danny Ings is out the door. I think West Ham will say to him, listen, you ain't going to get a game here. So like, we're either going to loan you somewhere else or you're going to have to go. Do you know what I mean? Like we're going to accept bids for you, basically. And I don't know why, but I think Mikel Antonio could be an all. If someone said to you right now, you bring Fulkrug in and then you bring Duran in. Now, Duran's the Antonio replacement. Is Antonio really going to want to sit on the bench this season? Like that's the like in his final season. Just remember this rightly, yeah, because it'd be. I think his contract runs out at the end of this season.
Yeah,
and I agree with that comment. He's going to go and play in the MLS. It would not surprise me at all, right? And I know people don't like to hear it. I know Captain Kane, but don't agree with me. Mickey isn't going anywhere. I don't want Mickey to go, mate. At the end of the day, because I think we need him to a point.
Yeah.
But if West Ham get Duran, I don't see West Ham having Danny Ings, Mikel Antonio, Duran, and Fulkrug in that squad. I just don't see it. Like especially when you've got likes of Bowen who can go up front and all. That's 5.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't like to think that our time of watching Mikel Antonio is over. Like There's something beautiful about the way Mikel Antonio plays. It's like he does the ugly side of it. His touch isn't great, but my God, does he put himself about? He gives 100% every game. He's always been Mr. Reliable. Every striker that we've signed since he's been playing centre forward has not got in a team ahead of him. Like he's done everything for this club. And I know he's entertained the idea of a move. There's been a couple of times he's been close to being out the door and it's fallen apart for whatever reason. He's always just got his head down and cracked on. And so I've got so much respect for Antonio. So I haven't even considered the concept of Antonio leaving this summer because it never even entered my mind. And now you've said it, I'm like, it does make perfect sense. And it would break my heart to see him out the door because I absolutely love the bloke. But it does make sense. You're not wrong. And if a big bid come in, I'm sure if we could, again, we talk about player trading now. If we could play a trade and we could save 100 grand a week on Antonio's wages and get a small fee for him as well, you know, it's money to go towards the Duran pot, and it does make sense as much as it breaks my heart.
Because I'm going to be honest, there's one thing with West Ham that we have been for many years, especially with the fan base. We've always been sentimental with players. That's one thing that we are. As a fan base, we get sentimental with players, and we don't like to see players go. I was like it with Dec. I didn't want to see Declan Rice go, but he really hit me there because I was like, I know he's a quality player, but he's going, like, and we've got to accept it. And I think with Mikel Antonio, I think if someone said to you right now, you have a choice. You either take Mickey now, let Mickey go now, and then you get Duran, or you don't, and then you lose out on Duran. And we give Mikel Antonio a season at West Ham, and he might not do anything. Like, not to say he might not do anything. Wrong choice of word, but he might not get the game time that he thinks he's warranted. Then is that really worthwhile? Do you know what I mean for him?
Yeah.
34.
Mate, you're 100% right. And when you take emotion out of it, it would be so sensible. And from his perspective as well, he's still got loads to offer. Like his form towards the back end of the season. I know he talked on the Stephen Bartlett podcast, was it? And he talked about he was going through mental health problems. And when you listen to that interview and then contextualize it with his performances over the course of the season, and when he said he started feeling better, it was bang on. When he started feeling better, you could see his performances were back to his best. And he put in some fantastic performances towards the end of the season. He's got a lot to offer a team. And it will be harsh on him. You struck on a really, really important point last time we had this chat last week, which was if this is his last season and he stays, that we have to phase him out and we have to do it respectfully because he's got a lot to offer a team and he's done a lot for this club. So if I was Mikel Antonio in this position where he's just looked like he's getting back to his best, he's been injury free for a while, and he goes, I've got probably a couple more seasons of being able to play at a decent level. You would go to the MLS if you had an offer, wouldn't you? Because he would tear that league apart. He'd be way too good for most of the defenses in that league.
And let's be honest, Jay. It'd be his final big pay packet before he ends up retiring, isn't it? Do you know what I'm saying? Because I don't think I can see what people are saying in the chat. Don't get me wrong. So people are saying that Antonio will surprise you. He does it with every striker. Every new striker that's come here, he's always turned up. Now, this is not a dig at Antonio, far from it, because the geezer's been an absolute legend at West Ham, hasn't he, over the last few years. Do you know what I mean? That he's been here. And the goals that he's scored. But I'm looking at it from a sort of new era point of view. Like, this is not a sentimental West Ham. This is West Ham using their loaf, getting players out the door before they've got no money. Do you know what I'm saying? And if you have it, let's have it right. You got Cresswell on 1 year, you got Antonio on 1 year, you got Soufal on 1 year. Can West Ham really afford to keep letting these players go for free? Well, I don't think they can. Do you know what I'm saying? Especially when they're spending 25+ million on each signing, so to speak. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're not wrong. It's like the film Moneyball. If you've ever seen the film Moneyball, it's just like that, isn't it? You've got to take the emotion out of it at some point, and you've got to make the right player trades at the right time. Because you're right, to get a player. One thing we haven't done this window is skimp on quality. Like we have gone for top quality players in every position, and when the opportunity to potentially sign N'Golo Kante arrived, we were like, yeah, that fits the profile of quality. And it fits the project of we need to do a job over the next 2 years. So we haven't skimped on quality, but those players come with a cost. So I make you absolutely right in that we have to do sensible deals at the right time. And it's just so hard to take emotion out of it when it's someone like Antonio, isn't it? Similar to what you said with Declan Rice when he left. Like we'd watched him grow up in front of us, And so it was really hard to watch him leave, especially to another London club. So I see it similarly for Antonio in that it would be really, really sad to see him go. But you're 100% right. You've got to take emotion out of it at some point, and we've got to get money back for some of our assets. So him, potentially, Souček, Ward-Prowse, if they're the assets that are worth money and we get offers for them, reasonable offers, then you're right. Like we should be entertaining them.
Yeah, I agree. Get your questions in to me and Jay. We'll go for another 10 minutes and then we'll wrap this up. Let us know what you've heard today. If you agree, disagree, I will go through it. Although Antonio's an old geezer, he's real. The others are pretenders. Now, I don't think Fulkrug is a pretender to a point. I think West Ham have signed the player that obviously Steiner must have worked on. Do you know what I mean? Because one thing I will say, I said the other week, funny enough, that the Duran deal, Steiner winning a backup option who was on par with Duran, and that's why it's gone like the way it has. Do you know what I'm saying? Would you take Gomez from Liverpool, Jay?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I think I would, for a couple of reasons. One, he's very versatile, and I like the concept of a versatile player when we've got so many problems in our squad. You look at left back, for example. If Emerson gets injured, can you rely on Cresswell week in, week out? Like, bearing in mind, he's at the back end of his career. I think it was the right decision to keep him on for one more year because of the vast size of the rebuild that we needed. But I think he'd be a great second choice left back behind Emerson. But I also think he slots in at centre back for us. I think he'd be a really good signing. So I absolutely would take Gomez. Trevor Chalobah is another one I would take. I think he's a good player, and I think he'd be available for sensible money. So good question. I absolutely would take Joe Gomez. I don't know. What do you reckon, James?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. Obviously, he's ex-Charlton, isn't he? Come from Charlton's academy, went up to Liverpool. I think I would, because I look at the defenders that we got. They're so bad. I'll take anyone at the minute just to improve it. Like, I think he needs to move from Liverpool. I'll be honest. I think he's like when you got Van Dijk there and you got Canate. I think it is there. You ain't gonna do nothing. Do you know what I mean? You ain't gonna play consistently. I think if he comes to West Ham, I think he gets inside straight away. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think he can be a right menace, especially for attackers. Do you know what I mean? He's got that bit of attitude about him, which I like. Right, let's get to this one. I think we can also get Matty Cash on a free. Well, I'd love for us to get Matty Cash. You know, he's ex-Dagenham and Redbridge. He used to play for Dagenham and Redbridge back in the day. What will Lopetegui, or Loppy, as is said here, need to achieve this season for most fans to stay happy, satisfied with the club? What you saying?
We've had this debate, haven't we? We had this conversation briefly last time. I think what he will achieve, should achieve, and what will keep the fans happy are probably three different questions. I think to keep the fans happy, the majority of the fan base happy anyway, we have to be competing for Europe. We have to be hovering around that 7th spot as a minimum to keep the fans happy. I think what I'm trying to not preach, but trying to talk about is, bear in mind, again, a concept you and I talked about, which is this is going to be hard for the first couple of months of the season. I don't expect us to get many results in the first 6 games, because what I said earlier, when you think about maybe 8 of our starters haven't played a minute in preseason yet. When you include the new signings and the players who were at the Copa America and the Euros, they're only going to start looking fresh after that first international break in September. So I think we've got to kind of buckle down and we've got to buy into the fact that this is a completely new style. He's completely overhauling the squad from the look of things. And a lot of our regular game-changing first teamers haven't kicked the ball for West Ham yet. Other than that, behind closed doors, mythical friendly that happened the other day. So I think we need to try and be patient as a fan base and try and be accepting of the fact that it's going to take time. But at the same time, if we get towards the end of the season and we're still languishing in the bottom half, a massive portion of the fan base are going to be very unhappy with that. So I think there will be a trade-off that we need to consider if we end up in that situation. But my genuine belief is that after we get going, after maybe 6 to 8 games, I genuinely think the team will click. And I think it will be a really, really fun team to watch. And I think we'll start getting results, and we'll get results in a style that will make the fan base happy.
I think it goes into what you just said. Someone just said it there. James, who is this guy and why is he talking so much sense, right? But I do understand what you're saying, Jay. For me, like I think top 10 should be the aim. Like I think anywhere below that is not when you look signing Somerville, Group, Rodriguez, you've signed Kilman, you're looking like you could possibly sign Wan-Bissaka. That's not a mid-table side. That's a top 10 side. I think that we are going to be entertaining this year. Like we're going to concede goals, but we're going to score loads. And basically, it's going to be one of them ones this year. Unless we sort our defence out, then it's going to be like both teams to score bet every single week on West Ham United because I think we can score, but I just know we can concede. I look at us, and for me, I think we're working towards next season. I did say that before. I think this season's the season where we come into it, he integrates everyone in. Then the following season was when we go for a major hit. But it wouldn't surprise me West Ham if West Ham get Europe this year. Yeah, if West Ham sorted the defence out, West Ham can get possible Europe. But if we finish ninth this year and we have a good domestic cup run, it's not the be all and end all of the world. Like I will say that, and I think a lot of fans will accept that. Like it's when people say, if we finish mid-table, it don't matter.
Question for you, James. Would you take a 15th place finish but win the League Cup?
I think I would, but I wouldn't like to take it if that makes sense. So I think 15th doesn't justify West Ham anymore.
So what position with the league? What's the minimum position you would accept with a League Cup win?
Top 12.
12th.
Yeah. So basically, I don't look at West Ham as below any like mid-table and below, and then fighting for relegation. Because basically, 15th tells me West Ham have been fighting relegation for most of the season and just got away with it by the skin of their teeth. Do you know what I'm saying? I think if we get a League Cup victory and we finished in the top 12, I think I would accept that because I think if I want top 10. And I'm saying I think West Ham should get top 10. I can accept a top 12 with a trophy because then you can sort of justify that a bit more. But I don't think you can justify 15th in the league and a League Cup because there will be some people that say, well, look at the league form. It's been fucking terrible, but we've won a cup. Do you know what I'm saying? So, it's one of them ones. It's what you prefer at the end of the day. Do you know what
exactly.
Evening, Lee, hope you're well, mate. Do you know what I'm saying? 10th in the cup, my money's already down. That's Mark. He's got his money there. Top 10, in my opinion. Anything less is disappointing. 16th, as he gets us to Europe. Yeah, well,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm totally with him.
If we get all our targets, I'm wishing top 4. We need 3 or 4 teams to misfire. I don't think West Ham have got the consistency to get top 4. Like, maybe West Ham could do a Villa, maybe, but I don't think West Ham have got the firepower, especially in defence, like to sort that out. But I think definitely top 10. I think top 10 is a fair assessment. You know
on Anthony's comment there, I agree with you. Like you look at things on paper now, a ball's not been kicked, and you go, "There's still gaping holes in this squad, and we've still got a lot to do." Instead of being like, we have a lot of that conversation, don't we, about like, oh, well, would we accept this position if we finish here? Because as West Ham fans, we are traditionally pessimistic because we don't like to hope for anything because normally we get dashed whenever we get close to achieving something, right? But if we look at things from the other side of it and we look at things optimistically, you look at what Villa did and Villa ended up finishing top 4, could have ended up higher potentially and arguably. You look at Crystal Palace under Oliver Glasner. He took over and they absolutely flew. They were brilliant at the end of that season. Granted, I think they lost the Lise. There's interest in Eze, so they're still going to have a little bit of trouble, I think. But, they could go on and do something really, really magical this season as well. So you look at us and you go, if we do, in my opinion, right off the first 3 games, because we're going to be still getting up to speed. But if suddenly it clicks, you look at the star quality we've got going forward. If we get Wan-Bissaka and hypothetically get this big centre-back to sign in, let's say we manage to get to Debo, suddenly you look at that starting lineup and you go, that's better than Villa had last season, arguably. So there's no reason it couldn't happen. I don't think it will, but I like Anthony's like optimism there in that there's no reason why it couldn't if the stars align.
I think it goes with a lot of things. Obviously, teams will have to fall apart and West Ham have to be very good. Like, I think this season, I think West Ham can be very, very good, but it's whether or not this system clicks, as you say. Do you know what I'm saying? Because so far in pre-season, I'm going to be honest, I haven't really seen the system. I've seen the players bombing on. I've seen us try to do certain things differently. I get all that, but as a defensive outfit, I think I think up front and attacking wise, we're all right. We're very good. Somerville, Kudus, Bowen, Antonio, Group. You know, we've got all these boys who can come in and do a job. But from the midfield, defensive midfield down into the centre halves, we've got a lot of issues, like a lot of things where we just don't like.
I put this to you, James, right? Celta Vigo on the weekends. We'll beat Celta Vigo and beat them comfortably. Now that we got first teamers coming back, we'll look really good, and we'll have this conversation then. And we'll see how optimistic we're feeling, because that's the real litmus test, right? Because as I mentioned, we've got tons of players that haven't kicked a ball yet for West Ham in pre-season. We've got more signings that we're going to make. I'm confident we fill the holes in our back four and probably move on some players that need moving on. And I hope that you and I can sit down in, say, a week's time after that game's finished, and we've got great goals to talk about. We've got brilliant performances to talk about. We've got a system we can talk about where we go, oh, this actually looked really good. And we can actually dissect what's going to happen in that Villa game and say, this is where the game gets won and lost. So that's the optimistic side of me, is saying, I think we'll do Celta Vigo because we've got so many top quality players that are going to play in that game. And I think we're going to look really good.
I hope so. But it's just that obviously the first three games are pretty key to West Ham. And they're three very hard games to a point. Villa, Palace and Manchester City. What are you expecting, before we ran this up, what are you expecting from them three games as in points wise? What are you expecting and what would you be happy with?
I'm expecting, I think we're going to draw against Villa.
I agree.
I think we're going to lose to Palace because of what I said. I think Palace clicked. Palace have got that new style down, and I think they're going to hit the ground running this season. And I think we're going to lose to City. So I don't think that's a disaster. As long as we don't get rolled by Palace and we don't get rolled by City, I think it's not a disaster because we're still going to be getting up to speed. I think Villa at home, if we had a full pre-season with all of our star players, I'll be saying we should beat Villa, we should beat Palace, and we should give City a game. But because of where we're at, I think there'll be a lot of excitement around the ground for the Villa game, and I think we'll pull something out the bag there. But I think away at Palace, we struggle there. For whatever reason, we struggle away at Palace. And I never expect anything from a game against City. So as long as I'm happy with if we get a point from the Villa game, but we give a good account of ourselves in the following two games, I think I'm fine with it. I'm keen for the fan base not to panic if things don't click straight away, is the key thing that I think out of those games.
But does it depend on the performances, though, if the fan base panic? Because, like, for instance, I agree with you. I think Villa is nailed on draw. I think West Ham are past 5 Saturday night, first game. I'd be very shocked if West Ham get beat, especially first game with all the fans there and everything. Yeah, I think the Palace game is a tricky one because we never win there, and it's always a mental game, like 5-3, 6-4, whatever. It's always goals galore in that game.
Yeah,
and then obviously Man City, we've got to write that one off. West Ham just don't beat Manchester City ever. So is it a case of, because I understand what you're saying, but I think the only reason why the fan base react to a point, in my opinion, is that they see the performance and then they react to the performance. Because if West Ham go and lose each game 1-0 and West Ham have played really, really well, I don't think the fan base react if West Ham go and lose the game 3-1, each game 3-1, and we've been hammered to a point.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to a point that I kind of made last time, which is you look at other teams that have gone through such a big transition and where they maybe struggled to get results to start with under new management and with big squad overhauls, but the metrics are there, the movements there, the possessions there, the attempts are there, whatever. And I'm not a fan of looking at, oh yeah, we had 55% possession this week, we're moving in the right direction. But there has to be a sense of pragmatism in the first sort of 3 to 8 games, depending on how long it takes, where we go, right, the style is changing. The players are perhaps making individual mistakes because they're getting caught in a press, which I think will happen in the first few games, especially against City, because Lopetegui's not going to want to change his style for anyone. He's going to want to play out from the back, and he's going to want to get centre midfielders involved. He wants the centre backs to be comfortable on the ball. So if we're coughing the ball up in a press and we're conceding goals, but that's the only reason that we're conceding, but we still score, then I think you've got to look at that and go, there is still positives to take from the games. If that's happening halfway through the season, we're 19 games in and we're in the bottom 3 and we're not getting results, but we've got 60% possession every game, I think there's a serious conversation that needs to be had about whether it's working. But at the same time, in the first half dozen to 10 games, wherever, however long it takes to click in the first that amount of time, we've got to look for the positives. And as long as we can see progress every game, we'll be building up to something. Because like I say, remember when Arteta's Arsenal were bottom of the league and people were calling for his head after like 4 games, and look at where they are now. So we just got to try and be patient if we can.
Yeah, I remember them days. You know what I mean, if only it was a reality. That is me and Jay done. Please do smash a like on the video. Subscribe to E20 Zone TV. That man's going to be a regular on here from now on. I've got him on here. I've signed him to a new 5-year deal. So there you go. You know what I mean?
The biggest signing of West Ham's transfer window.
The biggest signing E20's made since WestHamOnline. Jay's going to be on here as a regular contributor to E20. And it's been a pleasure to have Jay on, as always. And I will be having him on again in the near future. I'll be back during the week. Obviously, if West Ham sign any players, I will tell you about it. And I look forward to seeing some new bodies and new faces through the door. But Crook is here. Somerville's here. Rodriguez is here. Who else is going to be here? Do you know what I'm saying? Jay, would you like to plug anything before we go?
Yeah, grab me on Twitter at JDogWHU. A few really cool people followed me on there last time. Always keen. If you disagree with me on anything, feel free to tell me. Always happy to have a chat. And I would love to be wrong on the things that I'm pessimistic about. So grab me on Twitter at JDogWHU. And buzzing to be here, and we'll be back soon.
No worries, mate. That's been me and Jay. Have a good Monday evening wherever you are. And I will see you again in the next one. Peace.
Cheers.
Come with me.